The room was quiet. Then the mic caught his voice. The Roosevelt room was still, except for the occasional shuffle of polished shoes and the tapping of fingernails against briefing folders. It was supposed to be a closed-door strategy session. No press, no live feed, just a handful of top advisors, Pentagon staff, and one very tired president at the center of the long oak table. Donald Trump sat slouched slightly in his chair, not out of disrespect, but exhaustion. The Korean peninsula was once again on the brink. North Korean naval vessels had crossed an unspoken line. Intel suggested Kim Jong-un was testing more than just the waters. The cameras in the room were meant to be off. Aides had double-checked, but no one noticed the auxiliary boom mic still recording from the earlier press pool setup, forgotten during the shuffle, still wired into the live transcription console in the adjoining room. No one, except for the junior White House tech on shift, who hadn't yet hit the switch. "All right," Trump said, waving his hand dismissively as an advisor rattled on about defense posturing. "Let's drop the official crap for a minute." A few heads turned. When Trump got informal, things usually got honest. Or dangerous. He leaned back, exhaled deeply, and muttered just loud enough for the mic to pick it up. "You know what scares me about Kim?" Silence. Then he answered himself, "Not the nukes, not the parades. It's that I think he believes he's me. 20 years ago. Just alone, loud, desperate to be remembered." Across the table, General Callahan blinked. "Mr. President?" Trump didn't look at anyone. His voice had dropped, like he was no longer speaking to them. "I see those eyes in the footage. Same damn look I had before The Apprentice. Before all this. Like the world owes you something, and you're gonna take it before it forgets you exist." He rubbed his forehead. "And I hate how much of that. I understand." At that moment, the White House transcription system in the next room captured every word. The junior tech froze. He looked at the screen, then at the recording active light, still glowing red. The next morning, before sunrise, a secure message hit the inboxes of 3 intelligence departments. Subject line: "Unintended presidential remarks. Transcription attached." The junior tech, frozen in panic the night before, had done what protocol demanded: forward the data up the chain. He hadn't read the file twice. He didn't need to. The weight of those words had clung to him like static. By 7:12 a.m., the transcript was sitting on the desk of National Security Advisor Claire Romer. She read it twice. Then, once more, slower. "I think he believes he's me. Desperate to be remembered. I hate how much of that. I understand." It wasn't just off-script. It was confessional. It was vulnerability. By 8 o'clock, it was circulating quietly through the West Wing. No one said anything out loud, but glances sharpened. Phones were tilted subtly to display the document in hushed corners of hallways. At 9:03 a.m., Trump entered the Situation Room for the daily briefing. He was in a sharp navy suit, coffee in one hand, Fox News bullet points in the other. Business as usual. Until Claire Romer stepped forward. "Mr. President," she said gently, placing the printed pages in front of him. Trump looked down. It took him 6 seconds to realize what it was, then 3 more to realize what had happened. He didn't shout. He didn't curse. He just stared at the words, at his own words. And then he whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. "So, the room heard me. When I wasn't talking to the room." Claire remained silent, arms crossed. Trump folded the transcript in half. "Has this leaked?" "Number, not yet." He nodded slowly. But even before the words had touched the press, they had begun to ripple, because this wasn't a political gaffe. It was something far more dangerous. It was Trump, unfiltered, showing empathy for a man the world called a tyrant. And in D.C., honesty was often the most lethal kind of mistake. Trump sat alone in the Oval Office for longer than usual that morning. No briefings, no press calls, just the transcript. Folded, unfolded, refolded. His fingers tapped its corners like it was a live wire. He wasn't angry. That was new. He wasn't planning spin or tweets. He was remembering. Remembering Kim's face. The rare moments behind closed doors. The forced smiles. The over-rehearsed jokes. The dead seriousness behind cartoonish spectacles. They had only met a few times. And yet, Trump had recognized something in him each time. Something he hadn't admitted aloud until now. Not to his staff, not even to himself. Just a silent mic. And now, Washington was holding its breath. In a private war room under the Pentagon, General Callahan and two cyber intelligence officers were already preparing potential responses. Not to a missile strike, but to a media leak. What if North Korea hears this before we control it? One aide asked. He could take it as, what? Weakness? Sympathy? Or, Callahan murmured, as validation. Meanwhile, inside a dim room somewhere near the DMZ, a North Korean analyst sat upright, eyes locked on an intercepted data packet. The transmission wasn't public. It was deep-layer stuff, pulled from a node in an American contractor's back-end system. The analyst zoomed in on the raw file. It's that, I think he believes he's me. I hate how much of that. I understand. He stood up immediately. Within 15 minutes, a printed copy of Trump's unscripted words was on Kim Jong-un's desk. And as the North Korean leader read it, alone in the thick hush of morning light, something flickered across his face. Not rage, not fear, but curiosity. Because for the first time in their cold standoff, he hadn't been insulted, threatened, or mocked. He'd been understood. The presidential compound in Pyongyang was rarely silent. But that morning, the corridors felt unusually still. Kim Jong-un sat alone in his private study, the transcript laid out on lacquered wood. His fingertips lingered on the edge of the page. He had read it 6 times. Each line etched itself into his mind like a riddle he wasn't sure how to solve. Trump's voice was still there, between the words. Not loud, not boasting, just human. Kim didn't trust emotion. He had been raised in a palace of paranoia. But something about this, about hearing the world's most brash leader describe him not as a villain but as a mirror, unsettled his defenses. He stood, crossed to a locked drawer. From inside, he retrieved a slim envelope. No insignia, just plain parchment. He sat back down, uncapped a pen, and began to write. Slowly, deliberately. To Donald J. Trump. From Chairman Kim Jong-un. I don't know who you were talking to, but I heard it anyway. And strangely, I believed it. The note was short, not threatening, not strategic, not official, just real. Kim sealed it himself. Then, against every military protocol and intelligence firewall, he handed it to his personal guard and gave a direct order. This is to be hand-delivered. No intermediaries, no press, straight to him. Meanwhile, back in Washington, Trump stood on the Truman balcony, eyes scanning the horizon. He still hadn't addressed the transcript. He hadn't denied it, hadn't spun it. And for a man built on narrative, that silence was unsettling. That's when Claire Romer approached with a folder marked Intel, Foreign Correspondence. Inside, a photograph of a sealed envelope, handwritten, from Pyongyang, addressed to him. Trump stared at it for a moment, then looked up. This really came from him? Claire nodded. It's real, and private, straight-line channel. Trump took the folder and turned away, but not before whispering under his breath, "What the hell are we about to start?" The Oval Office was empty except for Trump. He had dismissed his aides, turned off his phone, even told the Secret Service to wait outside the doors. In front of him sat the letter from Pyongyang, still sealed, still impossibly quiet. He reached for the envelope, his hand slower than usual, as if it might burn. He slid his finger under the flap and opened it in a single motion. The paper was heavy, off-white, folded precisely once. He unfolded it and read, "I don't know who you were talking to, but I heard it anyway. And strangely, I believed it. You're right. We are not that different. Not where it counts. Power is lonely. Legacy is louder. I know what it's like to speak to a room full of generals and still feel like a boy no one's listening to. I've been called a monster. So have you. Maybe they're right. Or maybe monsters are just the ones who remember how to feel and hide it too well. You asked a question no one heard. I did. You asked, what scares you? I'll answer it. Dying and being forgotten." Trump stopped reading. He blinked. Once, twice, no insults, no threats, no propaganda, just truth. A rare, devastating truth from a man raised on control. He sat back slowly, the letter dangling from his hand. Then, for the first time in months, Trump reached for a pen and a legal pad. Not to draft a policy, not to plot a response, but to write. Something unscripted. Something he hadn't done since before he ever ran for office. A letter back. Not as president, as Donald. Downstairs, Claire Romer watched the security feed in silence. When she saw the president pick up the pen, she knew this wasn't politics anymore. This was something else, something much harder to contain. The letter began the way no presidential document ever had. "Kim, I don't know what I'm doing writing this. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe this never gets sent. Maybe it's not meant for anyone but me. But I'm writing it anyway." Trump's handwriting was uneven. Not because of age, because of weight. The emotional kind. He paused often, not to edit, but to feel. "I spent my whole life trying to be bigger than the rooms I walked into. Louder, sharper, hungrier. But lately, I just want to be understood. Maybe that's weakness. Or maybe it's just what happens when you finally build the tower high enough to see over your own ego." He stopped, looked out the window. The sun was setting behind the Washington Monument. Golden light spilled across the desk. His fingers trembled slightly. He wrote again. "I don't know what kind of men we are. Maybe mirror images. Maybe cautionary tales. But I know this. I saw you for the first time, not on a stage, but in that mic I forgot was live. And maybe that's the only time anyone ever really sees us, when we forget we're being watched." He folded the paper, slid it into an envelope, and wrote a single word on the front. Private. No title, no diplomatic stamp. Just human. Downstairs, Claire waited with the courier. When Trump handed her the letter, she raised an eyebrow. "You're sending this?" He nodded. "No one else reads it," he added. Her tone was neutral, but her eyes questioned. "Why now?" Trump didn't answer directly. He looked past her, toward the hallway that led nowhere important. Then he whispered, "Because I don't want to be remembered for the walls I built. I want to be remembered for the door I left unlocked." Far across the ocean, a North Korean jet sat on standby. Unmarked. Untracked. Waiting. Not for missiles. For a message. It touched down in a remote airstrip just outside Pyongyang. A narrow runway carved between hills and fog, known only to a handful of military and diplomatic channels. The jet's engines powered down in complete silence. No motorcade, no press, no red carpet. Inside, A courier dressed in civilian clothes stepped off the ramp holding a small black briefcase. Inside was nothing but a sealed envelope marked, "Private, hand deliver only." Kim Jong-un was already waiting, not in full uniform, no medals, no regalia, just a charcoal jacket and bare expression. He took the envelope with both hands, dismissed the guards, and walked, alone, to the study. Inside, he opened the letter slowly, read the first line, then the second. And as he read on, his brow didn't furrow. It softened. There was no fury, no cynicism, just a strange stillness, like something long frozen had cracked somewhere inside him. He reached the final words. "I want to be remembered for the door I left unlocked." He read it again, then again, and finally whispered, so quietly the room barely heard, "You too?" Back in Washington, Trump stood at the window of the residence. The White House lawn below was quiet, the moonlight casting long shadows on the stone. He hadn't heard back, didn't expect to. But it wasn't about that anymore. He had spoken plainly. And for the first time in years, he felt relieved. Claire Romer entered the room, holding a phone. "Mr. President," she said carefully, "there's been an internal ping on the satellite feed from Pyongyang. No media chatter, no movement on the borders. But their encryption just opened a channel." Trump turned. "You mean—" Claire nodded. "They're sending something back." The encrypted message arrived at 2:17 a.m. Washington time. No video, no formal preamble. Just a short audio file, less than 15 seconds long. It passed through 3 layers of NSA clearance before landing on Claire Romer's secure console. She hesitated before playing it, then forwarded it directly to the private line upstairs. Trump was still awake. He always was during moments like these. He tapped the play button. The voice was unmistakable. Cold, calm, controlled. But different this time. Softer, slower, almost human. "If I ever unlock a door, it'll be because you did first." 7 words. That was it. But Trump didn't need more. He exhaled. No smug smile, no celebration, just a quiet acknowledgement that 2 men, trained by power to distrust everything, had somehow found a common thread, not through treaties or threats, but through truth. The next morning, no one in the West Wing knew. No public statements were issued. No executive orders signed. But subtle changes began to appear. A classified back-channel with Pyongyang reopened for the first time in 14 months. A pending missile response drill was postponed indefinitely. And a scheduled press briefing that included North Korea talking points was abruptly pulled from the schedule, with no explanation. Claire Romer watched these shifts unfold like falling dominoes. Quiet, deliberate, invisible to the public eye, but unmistakable from the inside. At lunch, she passed Trump in the hallway. "You think this changes anything long-term?" she asked casually. Trump didn't stop walking. He just said, "It changed something already." 2 weeks passed. The Roosevelt room, where the accidental recording had happened, now stood quiet. Same long oak table. Same American flag behind the chair. Same polished glass water pitchers. But everything felt different. Trump walked in alone this time. No staff, no advisors, just him. He sat in the same chair, looked at the same spot on the table. Then, for reasons he didn't fully understand, he spoke again, this time on purpose. "I don't think peace is some grand signature moment. I think it's when 2 people finally stop yelling long enough to realize they're both afraid of the same thing." He paused, felt the silence breathe back at him. "I never expected to see myself in him. But maybe the real danger isn't monsters. Maybe it's mirrors." He leaned back. This time, the mic was off. but someone had still heard it. Down the hall, Claire Romer closed her laptop slowly after reading a short, unlogged internal memo. It was unsigned, but she recognized the style. 7 words, same as before. Some doors don't need keys, just hands. She didn't smile, but she also didn't worry. Something had cracked in the old pattern, not enough to break it, but enough to let light through. That evening, on the other side of the world, Kim Jong-un stood on a rooftop in Pyongyang. The wind moved softly through the darkness. No parades, no speeches, no ceremony. Just a man, quietly staring at the stars. He lifted a hand toward the sky like he might catch something invisible, something drifting between 2 men who once only knew how to threaten. Months passed. No historic summit was televised. No flashy agreement was signed. No peace prize awarded. But missiles stopped launching. Tweets stopped flying. And for reasons no analyst could fully explain, the global tension graph between Washington and Pyongyang flatlined. Not in surrender, not in victory, but in something stranger. Mutual stillness. At a press briefing, a reporter asked Claire Romer, "Has President Trump changed his stance on North Korea?" She glanced at her notes, then answered without looking up, "Sometimes diplomacy doesn't speak in headlines. It whispers." One afternoon, deep in the White House archives, a junior aide stumbled across a misfiled envelope. Inside, a printed transcript. Trump's forgotten, off-mic confession. He stared at it, read it, then asked a senior staffer, "Should we destroy this?" The staffer, older, wiser, shook her head. "No," she said. "We preserve it. That moment might have done more than decades of policy." The file was quietly reclassified. Presidential reflection, do not publish. But word of it continued to drift, not in documents, in whispers, among those who understood that sometimes the loudest change comes from a voice that was never meant to be heard. Trump never spoke publicly about the exchange. Kim Jong-un didn't either. But every now and then, foreign satellites captured a curious image. A single white chair placed on the balcony of a Pyongyang compound, facing west. Always empty. Waiting. And once, just once, a matching image appeared from the Truman balcony in Washington. 2 chairs, side by side. One man watching, the other remembering. No words, no war, just silence. And sometimes, silence is the sound peace makes when no one's looking. In a world where power is measured by volume, sometimes the quietest words carry the deepest weight. What began as an accident, a forgotten mic, a whispered truth, became something more. A moment of unexpected understanding between 2 of the world's most feared leaders. There was no treaty, no press conference, no handshake on a world stage. But maybe, just maybe, that's how real change begins. In silence, in reflection, in the echo of words never meant to be heard, but impossible to forget.